Welcome to Gray Areas, episode 611, February 20th, 2024. Man, it's nice not having word salad at the beginning. And if you happen to miss last week's episode, yes, there's the new intro. Yes, there's the new name, all that stuff. Go back and watch that one if you missed it.
The dogs crack me up every time in Cody's intro. I'm gonna laugh every time.
Good. I think it's the fact that he looks so surprised. Like he's sitting there, he's like, huh?
Yeah, they're like the best part of you. You know? Like they're like your lifeline. They're tethering you to like the side of light and morality.
Not my own dogs.
No,
your dogs specifically.
My dogs specifically.
My dog does that to you too. To be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, except for the one you just got rid of.
I have all of my dogs.
What about what's his face?
Yeah.
Ah, yes. What's his face? Who could forget?
What about him? Our favorite dog.
So I'm wearing my Space Jam shirt in honor of Time Capsule.
Which is ironic because Space Jam is not in the time capsule.
Did we do it and it didn't get voted in?
Yes.
That's too bad.
That's correct.
Well, still, we made a mistake, and this shirt is to honor that. And so this is great. What we do is we take Cody through. This is what I was saying. Like the greatest hits, our entire history. Like when Michael Jordan retired and he's wearing all his old shoes. That's what we're doing with you.
Well, I have some good and bad news for you then.
Well, all the Buzzer, BuzzFeed, Buzzsaw, Buzz Off, all of them.
The good news is that Cody's actually already done Time Capsule once before.
I was waiting for that.
Well,
You just weren't here.
Okay. It still take you to a tour.
The other good news is that, we're going to take him on a tour because I went through and found every single time we've done Time Capsule and have all the results logged now.
Nice.
Wow. Man.
So at the end, we'll actually see if these two can join that company, and then we'll go over what has and has not made the cut. But
I'll bet.
How did you feel doing all that effort and work?
like I usually do, kill me.
Okay.
He loves it.
But it was easy to do in the background while I was working on other stuff. It was just, all right, get to that segment of the episode, then listen to us blab about it for a while, skip ahead a bit, try and find the point where we start giving scores, get frustrated when people start to give scores, and then go on a 7-minute tangent before finally going back to scores.
Sounds like Sean.
Dave.
I'm insulted right now, Sean. That is your MO, not even your method operandus. It is more of like your actual identity, yourself. It is what you are.
No, actually, I mean, to the truth, Cody, we spent a lot of the first episodes with Dave being like, anyway, like we will go on like a barely tangent, and Dave will be like, anyways,
get back on track.
And then by episode 250,
and then you realize that it wasn't worth the effort with Sean.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
You can learn, because
in the process of doing this, I got to see all the different iterations of the show, because this goes back to, technically, because this was originally called Buzzkill, it goes back to episode 4. Now, episode 4's Buzzkill was the early version of that segment where it was just go in depth about a movie, and then episode 4 it was Back to the Future and talk about like what worked and what didn't. It eventually became the scoring system nostalgia bait thing about 6 times later, and then officially became Time Capsule 6 or 7 times after that. So I got to see like the Dave, Michelle, Sean, and me crew take it on, and like all the different permutations, the different versions of the show. And yes, to the earlier point, we got a lot better at it as time went on, because the early ones were a little rough. Sometimes it'd be like, well, anyways, I think about it this way now. It's like, not now, not yet. You got to start back then first. What are you doing?
That was Dave.
Yeah, that was probably me. But I have been actually listening to old episodes just kind of here and there. And so I know a little bit. I just haven't been documenting when I hear them. So that's my only issue. But yeah, I have heard the transformation through time where Sean mellowed out and then I rose. And so we kind of actually met in the middle a little bit as far as our going off on tangents around like 200 or so.
I didn't mellow out. I'm just biding my time.
I think Dave was more willing to come along for the ride, and because he was, Sean didn't feel like he had to drag him on for it so often. And that's how you met in the middle. True. You went, okay. He saw that you finally weren't being such a stick in the mud. He's like, all right, I can lay off a smidge.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
A little.
Actually.
I got scared when things didn't go according to the plan. Like everyone loses their minds.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Right. We've talked about the past before. We remember it, but now listening to it directly for the first time in a while, because I don't go back to old episodes anymore. It is a lot more stilted. It is a lot more like very brief back and forth and punchy. Part of that's because we didn't have video. We couldn't see each other. So it was hard to tell when people wanted to talk. Part of it was just we were inexperienced, and you could tell we were breaking the show apart and then like stitching it together in post. It was not as good as it is now.
And we'd always want, Cody, we'd always want to like leave, like we would all be trying to leave a segment that we know we were going to be breaking on with like the hanging like thing. Dave is most guilty of this too, though, where he'd want to leave with like a line, and we would have a line, and then you would throw in another line, and we'd be like, we had it already.
So basically, just you all battling to have the last word before.
Yeah,
the
like we have like a
segment
perfect
ended.
segue, and Dave would be like, "That's how the cookie crumbles."
I think I probably did say that one time, possibly like verbatim.
Probably.
The scary thing to think about, Chris, is as you think about the past of Time Capsule / Buzzkill, we're almost at the point we could do Buzzkills on the things that came out in the year we started doing Buzzkills.
We are actually, because in the process of going through all the past ones, the bar we set was only 10 years. We said at least a decade in the past, and this, of course, was back in 2011, which meant 2001. So a couple of things that we're talking about today, we technically could have done 10 years ago, because we're doing a couple of things that were 20 to 22 years ago for this one. So, yes, there is a plethora of things we can get to, and it is including now our own show.
This is all great. Like, we're having a lot of fun talking about the, like, reminiscing, and Cody's like, I do not give a fuck
I'm not saying
what
that.
you guys are doing. This is so...
I like to hear that
you
how much you and Dave tried to battle each other to talk more, which I'm like, wow, things have changed so much. It's crazy for me. I came right in here and it's like, wow.
It's just a completely different show at this point, right? No one even can, like, how could you tell?
So, in case you're new to this, maybe you didn't even know what the hell the previous iterations of the show were, and this is your first episode. I used to give a long introduction. We're not going to do that. But Time Capsule is a segment where we look at things from at least a decade ago, but we're looking more for like childhood stuff, teenager stuff, whatever. And we rated on 2 scores of 10. 1 from back then, 1 from now. So the idea is, how was it when we were kids or younger, and does it hold up? Because that's the crux of the segment. And the thing that decides if it goes in the time capsule or not is the now score. That has to be a 7 or higher aggregate among the 4 of us. If it is higher than 7, it makes it in the capsule. If it's not, we never talk about it again.
Which we've really stuck to.
Review.
Absolutely.
Well,
especially Space Jam.
Especially Space Jam. Yeah. Mike used to listen to the show. I don't know if he does anymore, for the record. Maybe he does. Hopefully. I don't know. But he would be like, you mentioned Space Jam every episode. There's a stretch there.
You
like,
do work it in a lot.
Well, it's because it's a
thing.
really impactful movie.
It's it's not
to your childhood.
No, to the world.
No.
All right. So what do we got? We talked about 2 different things. I like both of them. So whatever you want to start with, I'm good with.
Yeah, we usually have them divided into categories, which they still are on our planner just for tradition's sake. We do like a media one and a merchandise one. And a lot of times we would start with media first. And so to keep the old tradition, we're going to do that and talk about a 2004 film, nearly 20 years from the date. I think it was April 2004, called Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. This is something that we have alluded to a lot on the show, but never actually spent a segment on. So I'm excited to see how it does here in Time Capsule, and we'll see if it makes it to the aliens who discover it in 50 years when it's opened.
I'm confused. Anchorman came out like 5 years ago, didn't it? Like, that's how it feels. It's fresh. I remember this movie so well. And when you say it came out almost exactly 20 years ago, it's like, good Lord, that's terrifying. Like,
I don't know. I was in my macaroni phase when it came out, so it does feel like a lifetime ago for me.
You were eating macaroni, or you were putting it on paper and making shapes and gluing it together?
Eating macaroni, being macaroni, I think would have applied too.
If you really want to feel bad, how long ago did the sequel come out?
I'm going to guess 6 years ago.
12 years ago.
2013,
Holy
11 years
shit.
ago. So not only does Anchorman feel like it was much more recent, even the sequel is a decade or more old at this point. So that's real bad news for us.
Is 11 years old already?
Yes.
Man, the 3 or 4 years of the pandemic is just one big fucking year to me.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that's true too. I actually like the sequel. We're not talking about the sequel, but I just want to throw it out there that I did like it. You said it was crappy. You said it was crappy. I liked it. I thought it was pretty funny.
I liked it.
I had its moments.
I liked it for what it was.
Yeah. Was it as good as the original? Hell no. But is it good? Yeah, it's fun. I had a good time.
I had a weird journey with the original because I really didn't like I found it. I don't know why. What mood I was in when I watched it, what was going on. I found it like almost completely unfunny the first time I saw it. And then I watched Talladega Nights, which I thought was very funny. Actually, to this day, I still think it is funnier. But after that, going back and watching Anchorman, I was like, oh, okay. And this isn't like then and I'm not mixing it up because it was like maybe 2 years after it came out, I watched it again. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. This is pretty funny. I like what they're doing here. For the most part, it works.
Can we just eliminate Sean from the contention of this?
Which part?
At all?
Which part,
you can't
though?
score?
That I like Talladega Nights more, or that I didn't love Anchorman for the first time?
Mostly the first, but it's like 99 and 98%. Like it's
They're
that
both
razor
bad.
thin of why. It's
Sure.
both reasons. But Jesus, like you didn't like it at first, which okay, I can kind of understand how maybe the first time you see it, maybe you didn't catch it in the right setting. Maybe somebody had it on TV and you didn't see it all or something like that. But thinking Talladega Nights is funnier. Talladega Nights is fine. Like it's funny. But funnier? Oh God!
Look,
no,
I'm going to do
no,
Chris
no,
a favor.
no, no,
I'm
no.
not going to launch into. I'm ready to launch into Talladega Nights versus Anchorman, but I will preserve the segment. We'll get into that on another day. Dave, I
funnier
promise.
versus better movie is again a thing you could dive into with the two of those.
Yeah, you can. But Anchorman, we're talking about Anchorman, and
Okay.
and it's good. I don't know, something about like some of the jokes and everybody quotes it and Odin's beard or whatever. It didn't hit me the right way.
It's great. Odin's Raven,
Great.
but
I don't give.
anyway, no. Okay, I'll go launch in the back then. Seeing it when I first saw it, I don't think I saw it in theaters, but I saw it on DVD like a year later or something like that. I've quoted before on this show that I think it's probably the funniest movie I've ever seen. And at the time, oh my God, like I laughed my ass off the first time I saw it. It was quotable. It was funny. It's got rewatchability because the more you watch it, the funnier it got at the time. Like I just at the time, and it hit me at the right time. I was 19 years old when it came out, in my early 20s watching it. It was the absolute perfect time to watch this movie because I kind of had some nostalgia from those types of reporters that were in the late 80s, early 90s, that type of feel of local news anchor teams like that. And yet I was old enough to get the jokes at the same time. So I just had this perfect blend of like when I was a kid remembering it and also when I was adult getting the adult jokes.
Yeah. I'm
I
about
guess-
to launch into something, so someone else should.
I'm just
go
gonna let you go.
first.
I'm just gonna let you go.
Okay. Well, Chris, let Chris go.
Yeah, I mean, we're about the same age, so it was around the same experience for me. I saw this at NAU. It was so I didn't see it in theaters, but shortly after that, it came out in Prochnow. I don't know why you're shrugging at that. I see nothing in theaters. So
No, I
it's-
can't believe that I'm the only one of the four of us that saw it in theaters.
I
It's
wasn't
fucking
big
crazy.
into theaters
I
yet.
was 14.
So, yeah.
yeah,
Baby Cody.
there is that too. Yeah.
God, you're so young.
I've seen pictures of him since I was digging around for pictures for the new intro and stuff. I've seen pictures of him
Does
from
he
back
look
then. I
the
was like,
same?
I look
Kind of.
thinner and douchier.
Yeah,
if you go
he-
and pull my high school.
he
photos.
looks more LA. That's about the
No,
only thing I would
yes,
say.
I really do.
Is your hat on crooked?
I'll show you a picture later.
All right, do
A
it.
flat
Yeah.
brim, maybe.
It's good. And we all look different back then, and we could all make fun of each of us. But anyway, so it caught me in a way that I wasn't expecting. But even then, it wasn't the initial viewing that sold me on this. I liked it when I saw it there. But between the setting, because it was in Prochnow Auditorium, so the audio was and just the fact that you kind of need multiple viewings of this to catch some of this stuff. I could sit here and think about anything that was in the movie, but like just one example. The very beginning, the first time you see Brick Tamlin, he's putting mayonnaise in a toaster. And they call no attention to this fact. He's just introducing himself and talking about the things he likes and doesn't like, but he's putting mayonnaise in a toaster, and we're not going to talk about it, but it's also a perfect summary of him as a character. It just works for him. So stuff like that, I didn't even catch whatsoever the first time. I don't even know if I saw that the second time. So like, I loved it back then. It's going to be a 10 for me. We'll get to scores in a moment, but like, it's a 10 for me back then.
Yeah,
It's
I just
10 for me
think
back
like
then.
some of the outburst stuff, I could take it or leave it. I don't care. The Odin's beard.
I don't think it's the
whatever you
funniest
said,
part of the movie
armpit.
by far.
No,
But
it's
the
not.
stuff like bark twice if you're in Milwaukee is like talking to his dog. That's so good.
You
That's
don't know
so
Spanish.
good. Saying accidentally telling all of San Francisco to like fuck off.
San
or whatever it
Diego.
was.
Did
San
you watch
Diego.
the movie?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago. That was really great too. So like, there's moments for sure.
Are you? That wasn't what you were diving into.
No, I was gonna go into this
Okay.
whole thing about John Lovitz versus Bill Barr, I think is the other comedian, and
Bill-
conversation that they had. Bill Burr.
Not Barr. The
Bar-
bald
Burr.
Boston guy.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Bill Burr.
I'll save you all from this, but yeah, that's so. Back then I would say I did like it. I would say like 8. I thought it was solid.
Are you
Okay,
scoring? We're
that's
scoring
great.
this all right now already.
No, you
Oh,
score.
okay.
You score the
Back
old
then.
one.
I will say this is probably my favorite Jack Black performance I've ever seen. He's in there for like 2 minutes,
seconds.
Yeah, it's
and he
a good
punts a
cameo.
fucking dog off of a bridge. And it's the funniest fucking shit I've ever seen.
Yeah. And he says, that's how I roll.
That's
and he
how I
just, and he
roll.
just rides off. And you're like, okay.
So I think my then verges into now. Maybe not even now because actually this that period of movies is already over. But getting the grouping of guys between Adam McKay and Will Ferrell working on this, and then Judd Apatow producing it, you deviate into two different directions of the comedies that run the next decade and a half. And this movie is pretty much the at the forefront of that. I mean, Steve Carell's in this movie, and I think because he's in this movie, he gets 40-Year-Old Virgin. I don't know that he does without that one-to-one step. Adam McKay and Will Ferrell go on to make Talladega Nights, as you're saying. Step Brothers is with John C. Reilly. I don't know that Step Brothers exists without Talladega Nights or whatever one came out first. All this shit goes step by step by step to create pretty much all of my funniest movies I've ever seen in my life. To Dave's point, I think saying that this is the funniest thing you've ever seen. I don't know, I classify it that high, but it's basically the grandfather or the great-grandfather to the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life. And I don't think without this, it doesn't exist. Seth Rogen's in this movie as a cameraman shooting cats for 30 seconds because that's where he was in his career. And then again, he gets into 40-Year-Old Virgin as one of the main characters, as does Paul Rudd, who was already famous for Clueless and multiple other things, but it just sends all these guys off into superstardom, trickling down to a deep part of that cast with a lot of the guys who keep running back as side characters or some SNL influence and things like that. Obviously, with Will Ferrell, that's where he comes from.
So you brought up all your favorite movies. I think this is interesting. Let's diagnose this because a lot of my favorite comedy movies are more in the vein of role models or Superbad, where it's
exactly.
Well, I mean, I guess that applies still, right? Because some of those,
Superbad is Seth Rogen's in that. Judd Apatow directed Superbad.
Fair.
I mean,
that's fair.
It is directly connected.
In my head, it's a different style of humor, and I think it is.
But it transforms
the lineage.
From all that.
But it's lineage.
Yeah.
I think similarly, there's another movie that we have not really ever talked about at length on the show, and we're going to have to at some point, but we've mentioned it. Scott Pilgrim also hits around the same time where it's not the launching point. Several important actors in that movie have done other stuff before it and certainly after, but it hits right at the tipping point of their cultural relevance.
Yeah.
Chris and I were talking about that with Aubrey Plaza, Anna Kendrick, a lot of those other people that are in there that go on and they're holy shit, these people are our most famous people. But you look through the people in this movie and the people that are in the movies directly after this, that's your funniest fucking people in society.
That's actually true.
From for the next 20 years. Yeah. I think finally we petered out and we don't really have Apatow doing stuff. A lot of those guys have moved on to do more serious stuff or just not really doing a whole lot anyways. Paul Rudd's one of the guys who's probably the most famous out of it still remaining. Steve Carell's really dove into a lot more serious stuff than he had once he finished The Office. And this movie, again, with some of the weird conversation tangent stuff, when they're talking about the pancake lunch or breakfast or whatever it is in the movie, weird side conversations like that, I see that as being the precursor to so much of the funny, stupid tangent shit we get in Knocked Up. Well, they're just bullshitting.
Yeah.
They just sat around, they had a bunch of funny people, they're like, funny people, be funny, we'll run the cameras, we'll decide how to edit it later. And I feel like this movie has hints of that. This movie is too structured to actually, there's too much of a fucking plot line to actually let it deviate too far. They actually have a lot of shit to cover.
Yeah.
Which is why it's actually a good movie versus when you say funny. I can see how you actually would think Talladega Nights is funnier. This is a better movie. This is actually a good movie in the bizarro world storyline that they're offering.
I actually agree with that.
Giving what it's getting at with female representation in media and shit like that. If you want to hit really deeper meanings that, I don't know, this movie was absolutely trying to make a statement, but it's fucking good. So again, I mean, that's where I'm this movie's, again, in terms of what it was then, it's 10 easily. And now I rate it incredibly high because of what it led to for so many people.
Also, Talladega Nights is the same film. I'm realizing same story.
It pretty much is.
If you break it down, person on the top of their game goes through a life crisis and makes a comeback.
Yes, it pretty much is the same.
What movie am I talking about?
And yeah, exactly. And honestly, all due respect to David Koechner, I fucking wish John C. Reilly was Champ Kind. Holy shit. Do I think he would have been so much funnier in that fucking role. Yeah. Paul Rudd's great in what he is. I don't know that anyone can do Brick Tamblyn like Steve Carell did.
No.
The Koechner obviously doesn't go on to be quite as famous. He's famous in his side character stuff. But if John C. Reilly is in this fucking movie, fuck, I would have had so much fun. Even if he's one of the rival news guys, I think I would have enjoyed
that guy was one of the worst roles in The Office, too. So that,
exactly. Exactly. He's terrible, and you can't deal with him in The Office.
Yeah.
And I guess that goes even further, because, I mean, I could get into all the other news anchor guys that are around. We get into every single version of these guys, I mean, Luke Wilson is snuck in there. Vince Vaughn obviously is not snuck in there. He's pretty prominent. Ben Stiller is Mexican for no fucking reason.
I still say "Como están, bitches?"
I mean, again, there's like they realize they're like, if we can get a bunch of really funny dudes and not have to pay them very much to cameo, we're going to make a really fucking good movie. And it's exactly what they did, and it's what they did over and over again. This is the end, which I think is like the culmination and end of Apatow's stuff, is basically every actor he fucking had in all of his movies thrown together in an apocalypse. And then, to me, that's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
It's really funny.
Because the whole fucking thing is, be funny. We're going to give you a light premise, and let's be funny. And I can just appreciate what they wrote in this movie while balancing the be funny as you all kill each other and brick stab someone with a trident.
Yeah, he does do that. What's your score for then? When you saw it back then, it was.
We only don't have your
absolutely.
score.
I was 14 years
we
old.
We all leaked them early. So Sean, what's your score then?
Oh, I said 8. I'm actually.
8. Oh, you did, yeah. Okay.
I'll stick with 8.
Sean,
it was
back
weird.
then doesn't matter.
I was
so
14 and he had a
8.
boner in the office. Did you think I wasn't going to say that was a 10 at the time?
You know
when I
what
watched
though?
it?
I'm going to say 7.5 because
Okay.
I'm going to factor in both viewings where I really didn't like it that much the first time, and then I liked it more the second time. So I'm going to go 7.5.
Cody,
Because
it
it's
was the
hugely
pleats.
important whether I go 7.5 or 8.
What was that?
It was the pleats. He didn't actually have a boner. It was the pleats.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was the pleats of the fence. It
Deceptive.
wasn't actually a boner.
Yeah. Man.
So
now,
we transitioned to now. The now time is what matters, and we've already talked about a little bit of what's happened between when we all saw this 20-ish years ago and now. This is tricky for me, if only for there's like one specific reason, and it's that I think more movies need to study what Anchorman did here, not because it was so devastatingly funny or well done, but because they pulled off something that a lot of other movies from around this time did not, which is you can watch this today and it hasn't changed because they were intentionally setting sort of a period piece that was also so over the top in a couple specific areas, like female representation in journalism, that it's never going to get canceled in the future. There's some lessons to be taken from this that I think modern comedies need to take a little bit more attention from because, like, there's some movies that came out after this that are already so dated by comparison. So the fact that this holds up well, we can argue about how well, and we'll score it accordingly, but, like, I'm sort of impressed because even, say, I love Zoolander. It's also way up on my list of comedies. I don't think it holds up nearly as well as this does.
I mean, I still love Zoolander. But in the way that you're talking about, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole reason, like you said, the period piece aspect of that, the fact that this was already set 30 years after it was set. You know, the movie came out 30 years after it was set. So now we're 50 years after it was set. Who cares? Like, it doesn't really change how we view it because it was already far enough in the past for how we view it. So anybody can kind of have this, wasn't alive, wasn't old enough during that time to really understand how it actually was. So now I have this representation of how it is. So yeah, you're right. It holds up because of that period aspect of it.
It's funny that you mentioned Zoolander because I actually see Zoolander, like that was my Anchorman. That's the movie that I quote. So hot right now, I maybe say probably once a day.
They're breakdance fighting. I mean, it's way up there for me as well.
It's inside the computer. It's way up there.
You can read minds.
It's just so good. The other reason this one's tricky is because we're like blending then and now because we're acknowledging, look at all these actors and like they got their start here and then they've gone on in the lineage, everything we've talked about already. But like now we're like confusing things sort of. We're acknowledging the past, but this is a current score and it still holds up. I mean, it's still great. At the end of the day, it's still a funny movie. The plot is still like there is a plot and it is like entertaining. There are some stakes, even though it's a comedy. So I would probably go 8. I would go for sure 8 now.
I think to Chris's point, like one of the reasons why this I think holds up a lot better is ignorance and stupidity. Like, and not really a really offensive ignorance. Like, it's just gonna stay funny forever. Like, they're not doing a lot of misogynistic shit. I mean, shit. Brian goes around and gets basically told to fuck off by most of the women in the movie. Like, he's trying to be a sleazy dick, and all the women are like, "No, get the fuck away from me," as opposed to like him getting the upper hand or anything like that. It's not working, and so I think like it inherently ages better just in that sense of what they leaned on very specifically was they're kind of having a pretty decent message in the first place in the actual plot line, but then most of the fucking hilarity is they're just dumb as fuck. They're all so fucking stupid. which is like why Step Brothers is really funny to me. They're just both fucking stupid.
Yeah, and Zoolander, of
and
course.
Zoolander, I mean, which Zoolander has, I mean, Will Ferrell, obviously, and then Ben Stiller. As a result, there's connections to that movie in this movie, I mean, as well, because all this shit just cycles over and over again. And so I'm like, I think you're right. Like, even over a lot of Apatow's movies, like, I don't think Knocked Up has aged particularly well. I think it's very funny, but I don't know that that's holding up super great.
It's aged the worst, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I mean, there's some pretty clear reasons for why it aged worse, given the plot of that movie. I think Superbad's kind of, it's not a period piece, but it's placed in the world of high school to where it's like, it's kind of hard to like cancel anybody because that's like what high school was for the most part over and over again.
Yep.
So it's not a period piece, but they put it in a setting that is conducive to what the story is doing. So you guys are absolutely right to look back and be like, well, it can't be that as offensive because we were placing it in a timeline where it would have been not so accepted anyways. And we're telling you it wasn't accepted in the fucking movie through the narrator over and over again. So, I mean, I get it. I feel like it just aged so much better than I think I ever thought it would have.
I'm going to give it 8.5. So I'm going to go up on my score because what it's making me realize is a movie like Anchorman where the plot drives the humor as opposed to like, this is a hot take, Cody. I don't know how you feel about this. I know how these guys think about it already, but like Airplane to me, and I know it's a time and I watched it too late and all of that, but like, I feel like a lot of the gags drive like nothing. They're just like gags. There's like excuses to have.
Well, it's SNL skits pieced together around a plot line.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Lowest hanging fruit too, but
it's not.
And I don't find that as funny as like something that actually, it's a South Park thing, Dave, making fun of Family Guy. Where they're like, we're actually beholden to a plot to derive our jokes, not just fucking throw everything against the wall.
I'm 100% behind you. Absolutely.
You don't like Airplane?
I get why it was funny at the time, but I don't think I'm the right audience for it, so I've never really found it that funny.
That's a much more measured way of saying.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it's shit or anything. I just think I'm not the one it was intended for, and I've seen different variations of comedy that have corrupted me basically in a way to go back and be like, yeah, some of the gags are funny, but I'm like, I don't know that the movie overall is super funny. I think it's important to the genre for sure.
Yeah.
I couldn't get that chat extension to work. I was trying for a half an hour before we went live, and it's so simple. It's a pain in the ass. But Maisie in chat said Airplane is perfection. So she's with Dave on this one.
Split. This is the biggest split between Maisie, Sean, and I, and any friendship that we have here is Maisie sides with me so holistically on this, and Sean doesn't. And so Maisie and I are gonna go like watch Airplane together and laugh our asses off, and you can go play Switch or something.
And Monty Python to an extent. I find a little bit more things to appreciate Monty Python, but it's still kind of the same. It's the same thing.
It's the time it came out. It doesn't help.
So
Cody, what do you rank? What's your score now?
Yeah,
probably 10.
Your now score
10.
I would watch this. I mean, I still watch this movie over and over again. Yeah. It's on my rotation list of. Yeah, I'm going to turn that on. I mean, there's a podcast I listen to that's the Rewatchables, and this is one of my best examples of I would jump into this movie at any moment of any time, and there's not a lot of wasted space or time in there. I think it's fucking entertaining the whole way through, and for all the stuff I already laid out, I'm like, it's been so influential to so much of what I find funny in my growing up period of what I thought was funny from fucking 13 to 21 is almost all those comedies that are helped by this came out right then. So yeah, of course I have to give it.
It's interesting that my Anchorman is Zoolander, and I think I would have rated it high back then and higher now. There's so much more that I appreciate and that I find funny now. I think it's a testament to Anchorman though, where you're like, yeah, it hit me that good back then, and like a fine wine, the jokes have only gotten
as thinking of movies that don't age well. 40-Year-Old Virgin's a great one that it doesn't age very well. That came out a year after this movie did.
Yeah.
You know how I know you're gay?
Yeah, then you know how I know you're gay, which I found unbelievably funny at 15 years old. Not nearly as funny at 33 years old.
Somehow it changed.
Yeah. This is interesting because we've talked in the past in Time Capsule, usually scores go down more often than not. Sometimes they go down just small enough that it keeps it in the time capsule, but it's rare that something goes up over time. I gave it a 10 back then, and I think I've never done in Time Capsule, and I know this because I just listened to all of them, is give a 10 then and a 10 now, and it's what I'm doing. Because as weird as that seems, and I'm not necessarily a fan of giving out 10s in the first place, it's probably my favorite movie. Not saying best, but if that's ever on, I'm watching it. I'm never changing the channel off of Anchorman.
If this movie came out today, how well would it do in the box office, and how would it be reviewed? It would be reviewed amazingly well.
I would think so. I was actually going to say, like, when We don't get movies like this anymore.
We don't.
Anyone But You is like the Jennifer Lawrence one.
We're struggling for PG-13 R-rated comedies. They didn't make a lot of money in the box office because
it's just rare.
The target audience doesn't have a lot of disposable income to go to those movies, like teenagers and shit. Things have gotten too expensive. I mean, fuck, a movie in Phoenix as a matinee is $10.
We also don't get like big time rom-coms as much anymore. That's another genre that's sort of faded away. Where it got superseded by a ton of superhero movies or whatever else. Like it's just not what the current climate is in the box office.
That's why I hope Anyone But You. Well, I'm glad I should say, not hope. It's not my movie, but it's doing really well in the box office. And I'm like, good. And the Jennifer Lawrence one, Hard.
I was surprisingly entertained by that. Honestly.
I've heard it's pretty funny.
I watched it.
I'm kind of sick of Jennifer Lawrence, but I heard it's pretty funny.
I don't like her at all, and I still found it funny.
And I'm glad though, because I'm like, I would like some of these. I used to love going to the theater. 21 Jump Street and Role Models, both movies that I laughed so much in the theater.
Oh, I mean, I could think through my like how hard I laughed and my best movie theater experiences. It's all comedies.
Yeah.
I mean, drama stuff, it's cool. Like superhero stuff, it's cool and all that. My best experiences in movies are when everyone is like literally falling out of their seat and you can't hear the fucking lines anymore because people are laughing so hard. And this movie was one of those experiences. I saw this when it came out and the movie theater was packed, and that probably helps my like looking back on it, but it was fucking hilarious and people were like, holy shit, these people are amazingly funny.
I don't like the narratives with a lot of movies and the whole superhero movies, the bubbles burst, all of that. I don't like it. The one narrative I think might actually be true is superhero movie sort of killed the comedy.
Well, it stole the fucking actors.
Well, it stole the actors, but also it set this precedent where like a lot of the superhero movies are kind of funny. They have one-liners and jokes. And so it's like, now it's not enough to just be a comedy. You have to have like action and all this other stuff. And that's where you're going to get your comedy now. And it kind of killed it.
Because situational comedy moved to TV. It's where The Office was. It's where Parks and Rec was. The ideas of like, this is a workplace comedy. It's basically the fucking Office, except for it's in a newsroom. And TV really took those on because it developed actors that were unknown. This is kind of people are unknown, but they end up having giant careers.
Yeah.
But it just sucks that we really lost that just situational basic shit of here's a group of friends, here's a conundrum, here's what fucking ensues and why it's funny. And it was a simple formula, and then we got really far away from it.
And then James Franco got canceled. And
then James Franco got super canceled.
Like ultra super duper canceled.
Yeah, which honestly I think we should have all seen coming. But
he was actually starting to get canceled just because of his like writing.
Because of his douchiness?
Yeah, yes. We would give out an award called like the James Franco Award, which is like, it's very like narcissistic or whatever. And then with all the women.
And then you had to cancel your James Franco Award.
Yeah, because it was already bad, so I don't know. But anyways, Anchorman. Time capsule. It's in.
Dave, your score.
Well, it's already in, Dave. I mean, unless you go with like a 0.
It is. This movie, I guess I won't go too far because everyone already touched on it, but I thought I was going to be outlandish by giving it a 10 now because it still holds up. It got funnier on rewatches, and the reason this holds up so well, besides this period piece that we talked about, is they've put so much in the background, so many little things around that when you watch it again and again, you're like, oh shit, I didn't see that last time. Oh man, like you're talking about, putting mayonnaise in the toaster type of thing. Little quips that he says like, look, just put the gun down and we'll play it like a prank. Like little quips like that don't make sense, but like when you put it all together, it's so funny. And the second thing that really does is that the Fred, I think it's not Fred Armisen, is it no. I can't remember his name, the actor's name, who was the head of the station. He calls out Ron on his bullshit, like when he says, "Oh yeah, diversity is an old wooden ship," and he goes, "No, I don't think that's it, but nice try, Ron," or something like that. Like he gets called out on his stupidity, and I think having that like person who calls out stupidity makes it even funnier in the end. So all in all, it's so rewatchable, and I will watch it again and again and again. It's a 10.
Fred Willard, I believe, is his name.
Fred Willard, that's his name.
Yeah.
You know what's weird is Will Ferrell is sort of that in Zoolander. He's
Yes,
almost like the straight character.
He is the straight character.
He is.
He's the psychopath.
He's just dressed like a fucking crazy person.
Yep.
And is the evil villain of it for the most part. But he really is because Jerry Stiller doesn't actually call it out. He acknowledges it, but he doesn't call anybody out on it.
No.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I guess Christine Taylor does it a little bit.
A little bit, but she gets sucked into their world, so it doesn't really last for the whole movie.
Yeah.
By the way, my favorite thing later, because I had so many things I would say back then were my favorite. They cut from one scene. They go clothes shopping to feel better, and before they run into Vince Vaughn for the first time, they're just walking over a hill talking. They're all eating like corn dogs and stuff. They're half eaten. They spike them on the ground.
Yep.
For no reason. All 4 of them just go, boom, and they keep walking. It's like, I guess that's how much you run the town now. You just litter wherever the hell you want, and we're not going to talk about it.
Nope. I do love that. And in it, the Talladega, we talked about the ghosts in the house. Just like stupid random things. If you're like paying attention, like that's funny.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Our second one shouldn't take as much discussion because what's interesting about it is it certainly was very important for its time period. But I'll be honest, even though I was one of the people who suggested this, I put it in the planner when I was updating it, I have no idea what I'm going to rate it now. I've been thinking about it all day and I have no clue. It is the old iPod. Now, we're talking about 2001-ish. In fact, it launched about a month after September 11th, which I did not remember in retrospect. But in October of 2001, we're talking the brick iPod, the one with like the wheel in the middle and the screen that had just words and a progress bar on it. Yes, there were many iterations that followed, but we're just talking original iPod and the impact that it had.
I wish we go more than a 10. Like,
oh yeah,
this is
as high as it could be
among
back then.
the most influential. Like, I don't know if I ever wanted anything as bad as I wanted an iPod. All my music in one location. Like, I was one of the kids carrying around the Discman like everywhere, and it was such a pain in the ass. You had to carry all the discs and the thing, and you had to keep it straight or it would skip. And only the really rich kids at my school had it when it first came out. Like really, like so I think like 2 people. And it was just like incredible. I was like, how are they doing this? And many years later, before I got my, I think it was a Nano.
It's same with me. That's what I was gonna say. I never had one of these. Nano was the first thing I got.
Yeah.
I remember, like, strangely enough, despite the fact that I went to a Catholic school, it was still the same deal. It was only the rich kids at the Catholic school had this when I was in high school. No, hell no, I did not have one of these, not at all. I didn't actually get an actual iPod until like 2006 or something like that, probably. But Chris knows, I think we told stories about this on the show. I rocked mixtape CDs through high school, all the way through 2003, 2000, all the way through there. And I thought it was the coolest thing that I could burn a CD and put like 12 songs on this CD. And then I hear about people who have this iPod who it's like, yeah, you can make those playlists and then take all the songs you've ever downloaded and have room for 5 times that amount still on your iPod. So like, you make whatever playlist you want, you can mix them, you can put it on random, you can just play. Like, the idea that I could have every single piece of music that I had in my gigantic CD binder or whatever I mixed on CD tapes all in one thing that was about this big, great. It was the most amazing thing, and more than a 10. Yeah.
And that functioned better as well. So it's not just that it was all there, but like, CDs, you're like, I want to listen to the 6th song. Click, 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 click.
Yeah.
This is like, scroll to it, hit, and it's there. It's amazing.
And it doesn't skip. It doesn't get damaged. It doesn't scratch. Like, none of that. It's perfect in that time.
I mean, I beat the shit out of my Nano, and that thing held up so well.
Oh, yeah.
It had, like, indents from my track spikes having been in my bag when I was running track that had, like, it stabbed into it. Perfectly fine. Didn't have any problem with it.
Yep. Yeah.
See, I don't know how much this relates, because, again, I didn't have one until a Nano, so I think that was, like, Christmas of 2005, so I guess that's, like, the middle of my sophomore year of high school, I think, if I'm thinking through it right. But like the one thing I started realizing, I'm like, this thing became like a reflection of my fucking personality at that point. I mean, I had the range of music that I had on there, even if a Nano only had like 250 to 300 songs or whatever it was. I'm like, granted, this one of these artists, not so good anymore, but like one of the first CDs I ever bought was Kanye West, because I loved Kanye West when I was in high school, when he wasn't fucking crazy yet, or he hid his crazy really well. But I had that venturing into all of the music that Sean and I are going to go listen to in October, which is just all of my emo, rock, screamo music and shit like that. I mean, and going all the way back to like all the 90s music like Sugar Ray and shit like that I grew up listening to in California, all the way back to Beach Boys. Like, I'm like, I have all of this. I'm like, these are all the things. This is like who I am basically as a person, depending on the mood that I'm in.
You reminded me, my teacher was like, the iPod is so amazing. I've talked to older people, and this is when it first came out, where they're like, I can't believe, it's so sentimental. My entire life is on this thing.
Absolutely.
What I listened to when I was growing up on the radio, my wedding songs, all of this, all the way up until now, all on one machine. It's like, it just blew them away.
Never had one of these. Ever.
Well,
because when I was in high school, we talked about the CD method, just old, like regular CDs. And then as I went to college, I got in on the expandable CDs that were like, all right, you just burn a bunch of MP3s onto it and you get these special type of players that play them. They look like CD players, but they play data CDs and not regular CDs, right? So you can put like 150 songs on it. And since I was poor still, that was enough. But boy, was I envious of anybody who had one. Because as Maisie said in the chat, like the circle scroller thing was super neat. You know, being able to like turn up the volume, just be like spinning your finger around. Like the menu system worked really well. As you guys mentioned, like it wasn't just that you could hold everything together, and it wasn't just that it reflected your personality. It was also just a huge upgrade over CDs functionally. Yeah. So like it's really hard for us now, I think, to capture just how huge this was. Because now Apple is a massive brand, maybe one of the biggest in the world. But back then, still relatively new. Yes, the Apple IIe was around like the 80s and shit, I know. But like this catapulted Apple to a whole new level.
Well, and also, like, so when we're rating it, we're saying more than a 10. Like it functioned well in terms of CDs and all that, but it was also like very innovative design, and even the tactile feedback. You spin the wheel, you get the little clicks, and just it was so brilliantly, and you can see why I paved the way for the iPhone eventually. But man, just a brilliant, well-designed piece of equipment.
So are we ready for now scores? Because
I'm going to go like, 11 or 12 or 13 out of 10.
It's a 10 for me. I never owned it, but it's a 10. It was massive. Yeah. But now is the tricky part. Because now I'm like, okay. Doug mentions, I think it's even better now because it's so easily modifiable. Yeah, I mean, if you can find one of these that's still functioning, I'm sure people love it. It's still sleek. It's still small. Like, it gets everything done you need it to. And there's always a big retro market, right? People love to get those things from back then and remember them, whatever. But, like, this is where I think we have to decide how we want Time Capsule to look going forward, which sounds like, oh, my God, why is it that serious? But let's be honest. This thing right here, my phone, is a better iPod. In every conceivable way. It just is. That's not fair to the iPod, but that's how technology goes. It does everything that did better and obviously tenfold other things. But do we factor into our now score that significance back then? The whole idea is to avoid nostalgia, which is fine. So we don't think about it just how we did back then, but basing it on what it did. Does it deserve to be in? And that's what the panel needs to decide right now.
I mean, I could do the same argument that I just did with Anchorman of like, this led to this, and now I have this fucking awesome phone. And the trick is, of course, is that let's say we didn't have the 18 different versions of streaming shit like Apple Music and Spotify and all of that. We don't have a need for the iTunes library thing anymore. Like the iPod was super, super important, and I think it does deserve so much credit. But like the functioning of how you got shit onto there is dead and gone because we used to pull. I remember getting the better version of the iPod, and I had downloaded South Park episodes into it. I could watch while I was doing dishes at my busboy job. Holy shit, this is amazing. I can bring up whatever the fuck I want on YouTube or any streaming service or any cable thing on my phone whenever I want anymore. Like, that's unfortunate that got super phased out and replaced because so many people built on streaming this. This can be on your mobile device. Everything's aimed for mobile anyway. But it's still, without Apple deciding let's create this fucking iPod, we wouldn't have had iPod Touches, which were then directly iPhones like 1 or 2 years later. To where, like, I don't know, I won't give it a 10 like I would have at the time, but I feel like a 7, 7.5 is still really appropriate.
Why it'd be funny to be like, I still give it a 10 because today's iPhones are just, or today's iPods are just my phone, which is, I know is not exactly the case. I think you touched on it though. It's hard because there's a chance I would still rock an iPod if I felt like there was actually any dependable way. Even back then, it was a pain in the ass. I didn't like iTunes.
The iTunes library was miserable to drag shit on. That was never functioned well. Once you got it on, iPod's amazing. The whole fucking thing, and iTunes crashed all the time, and it blew up my computer all the time, and
Spotify right now, kind of it works pretty well. But then I'll go out somewhere, and it decides all the stuff you downloaded. We've decided it's not downloaded right now, and so I wouldn't mind like a dedicated music thing that I know is always gonna have my shit. And it's gonna keep a record of the songs that I like and all of that the iPod used to do, but there's no functionality for it anymore. Is that the iPod's fault? Well, no, not really. It's the whole infrastructure. So
you have to go buy all the CDs, honestly, because there's no store, and you have to buy every CD and then rip them onto a library if it can even work anymore.
We're going to be in trouble here in a little bit, and this is a topic for maybe another show. But the fact that like so much of what we have we don't own anymore.
It's digital and we're renting it.
And
fuck
everyone
yeah.
made us promises, and they're reneging on the promise constantly.
Could be a full episode easily.
As shows are disappearing from every streaming service because they're like, no, it wasn't worth the tax write-off. You're never going to be able to watch that again.
Other digital ownership that they're swearing that you're always going to have, they've already taken. It's a whole thing. So, I'm still going to say it's a 7 for the legacy. I would still use it if I could. For the fact that we sort of are just using a super, super, super advanced one, I think 7 is fine. Am I kind of fitting the score to make sure that it gets in the time capsule? Yes. So, Chris, I don't know if this is what you were wanting necessarily, but it deserves to be in the time capsule.
But to your point,
it does not.
To your point, just to your point, really quickly, if I had the ability to use one of these, I would plug it into the aux cord of my car, and it would never leave my fucking car.
Yes, exactly.
It would sit in there, and I would have all the music, because I don't even like a whole lot of new music anyways. I wouldn't have to update it.
My sister does that, actually.
I would leave it in the fucking car, and I wouldn't play podcasts and shit through my phone. I would just play them through the iPod if it was tangibly able to be done. Then I wouldn't burn up my fucking phone's battery if I'm in the car or
also true.
Using it all the time. I would just have that MP3. Fucking just put it into the stereos of cars. Just make an put an iPod embedded into your fucking satellite radio shit that's in there, and I could just plug a fucking thing in and send music into it somehow.
Wait, hold on. Dave wants to get on his pedestal though. So
Dave wants to yell at us.
No, everything you're saying exists though. You want an MP3 player in your car? It's called a thumbstick. Most cars nowadays have a USB drive. You can just.
I drive a 2010 because I'm poor and I don't have that.
Most cars nowadays is what I'm saying. Not older, not cars from 2010. I'm saying most cars built in the last 5 years or so have that. And so everything you're talking about exists right now. And in addition, you can still use this. You can use their phone to put MP3s on. You can load MP3s on the same way you did an iPod.
It ruins the memory of my phone for all the apps I have on it.
Battery
segment.
Memory,
but no,
battery.
You can put your phone on airplane mode and still run those MP3s because it's all downloaded onto the phone.
I also think the argument for like a thumbstick existing is the same thing of like, you could drive a car, but like the horses still work totally fine. Like a horse is going to get you from point A to point B, no problem. It's but I'd rather have an iPod than a horse.
Cody wanted to have a music player in his car that he could just perpetually keep in his car. That you can do that. It's just
I just said
better to be an iPod.
I drive a 2010 car that has an aux cord, and I'm too poor to do anything else with it. So to my point of what I explained was, the iPod would be perfect for that situation.
To Dave's point, would you rather have a thumbstick if your car could, or an iPod?
I don't know if I could plug a USB in, I might just fucking do that, but I can't do that. Sorry.
Well, now you're fighting your own point.
Why? But I'm poor and I don't have that ability. So what I have the ability to have would be an iPod, and I was siding with you. And I'm trying to. That's gray areas, Sean. Fuck.
But the whole point of this segment is to not have any nostalgia, not have that was great back then. It's what's the functionality now? It's eclipsed. It's gone. This is 9,000 times better.
And that's why I raised
police when I'm on this, when I'm in the car.
That's why I raised the question, though. Should that be the way it is? Because when we're looking at the enduring items of these eras, should there be a world in which the iPod does not make the cut in the time capsule that we're creating? You're right. By the standard that we've used for about 25 different iterations of this, that's been the way it is. But should it be going forward? Because here's the problem. I'm not giving it a 10. And a 10 is what it would take now for it to make it in the time capsule. And I'm not going to game the system to do that. That's not how we do this segment in the first place. But I'm wondering if perhaps we need to look at the way we do the scoring system and either find a blend of now and then or just a vote at the end after we discuss the merits of both to see if it's like, how do I describe this? If I'm looking at the list of the old ones, like Mad Libs was one that we voted out pretty easily. Mad Libs is one that we gave a really low score to because it wasn't even very good then, but then it fell off completely after we got out of grade school because the humor didn't hold up. They had fallen out of the cultural phenomenon, whatever, right? The iPod's failings were not of its own accord. It was of other technology that surpassed it, but not like it had done anything wrong that then made it be devalued over time. So, like, I would probably be around where Cody was, which is like a 7.5 or 8 now, but it's not going to make the cut because with Dave's 3, it averages about a 6 and change.
And I think there's a small extent of, personally, this is anecdotal, right? So, I guess strike one, but I did not have the problems playing music on my iPod that I do now on my phone, trying to get Spotify to work, trying to make the battery life work, like all of that stuff. It's just annoying. It works, and it still works great, but it's not as good. And so I look at like you're looking at TVs nowadays. Would you choose a TV from today with a smart TV, the 4K, all that, or would you go on one of those what do you call the
CRTs?
CRTs.
Yeah.
Well,
Capture rate.
depending on what you want and what you're using it for, you would still do the CRT, even though it's nowhere near the level of impact that the TVs have now. So I think that plays a factor too, as well.
So
you
if
make you make the obvious point, I should say. It's not a great point. It's the low-hanging fruit point.
I will remember. I think I recall we did the Walkman for one. Chris, check me on that. But I think we did the Walkman. We had this exact same argument where the Walkman, man, it was a 10 back then. Loved the Walkman, every moment of it. Well, now it's a 1 because the iPod replaced everything. Was basically our argument.
See, I would have given the Walkman like a fucking 3 at the time because the motherfucker skipped all the time and was not
skip.
actually that
See,
good.
And that's the thing too. Is like
I'd be like, no, fuck that thing. I hated it.
That's just it. It had flaws that were exposed by the technological developments over time. Now, my smartphone is everything the iPod was. It just does a bunch of other stuff on top of it. But
I'll be really frank. I think Sean and I are just pissed that we can't just pirate music as well as we could from LimeWire and crap like that,
fair.
stick it on our phones
I
and
don't
play
even-
it. I think that's part of our problem, honestly.
that would
you
be
just
great,
have to
but
know
it's
how.
not even that. Like if there was a reliable way to just pay a reasonable amount to get the money to get the songs that I want.
To buy the song digitally and not rent it through a subscription, basically.
Yeah, because I don't fuck with Pandora. I don't fuck with Spotify. I still have MP3s of everything I care about for that exact reason.
Now,
I find
'cause-
everything with streaming to be a pain in the ass, and I want the control over it myself.
Yeah.
But it also means I have to keep this thing updated all the
Can I
time.
think of it, do I still own the music in my iTunes library if I log into some version of it?
I was about to say I have not dug into it, but you know how much money I spent on iTunes? And
Hundreds.
that music for me now, realistically, is gone.
Yeah, it is. Like to Sean's point of what we own and that. I had so many Christmas and birthday gift cards to iTunes for $50 so I could go grab like 4 or 5 albums I wanted desperately. I bought all kinds of music and I'm like, holy shit, where is it now?
Yeah.
Come to think of it. Because I don't have a functional place to put it. I guess I could put it on my phone into my Apple Music that's on there. You're right. I guess I could go about that. It would just eat up a fuck ton of memory.
And I don't even have an iPhone. So that, like...
Yeah, but that's because you're fucking stupid.
Well, I'm just saying, though, so, like...
But
Another
Maisie
argument.
does, and she says, as far as I can tell, my iTunes music is gone.
I think it is. I think they pulled all of it if you didn't download it into some other version. Because you could pull it into other folders on your computer and hide it as MP3 somewhere else, not in the iTunes library. But I think if you, like, I don't know, I have my old computers from high school. I should turn one on and see if my iTunes library has the MP3s in the back-end files like section.
So ultimately, iPod does not make the time capsule. If we're going to make the change, we'll have to decide that going forward. But by
what
the
is
old
your
standard,
score, though, Chris?
It's an 8.
Okay.
I said 7.5 or 8. I'll go 8.
So Dave really just single-handedly
He did.
submarined.
Because of what it. Well, I'm not looking at it through nostalgia lens. I'm looking at it now, and I don't want to use it now because I have something that works better.
I'm going to
I
kill
just do.
things Dave loves with a 0.
That's fine.
Yeah, but
I
also,
can't wait.
yeah, you saying you're not looking at it through a nostalgia lens insinuates that we are all looking at it through a nostalgia lens, and I think we're trying to explain. Yes, the lineage and the history matters, but there are reasons where we still want it today. And
I wish that we still had an iTunes library that was it had developed into being more functional, and I could easily transport music onto that. Again, to Sean's point, is I understand the music is accessible easily-ish in a way through subscription services and all that crap. I don't fucking like all those for Sean's digital rights issue thing that I've started to really catch on to in the last year. That's, I think, my ultimate point is I would have loved to be able to pay 99 cents for individual songs right now. I'd fucking do it. I'd pay my money if I had that ability. I don't have that ability anymore, and that's nostalgia in a way, but I also just wish that technology, makes me probably old, still existed, and I didn't have to go through every 3 songs I have a fucking commercial on Spotify because I'm not paying $8.99 a month for it.
yeah, and do I want an iPod more than a phone? No, but I think there is a space where having a machine dedicated to just playing music is still kind of cool.
Yep. And I would like to use it in my car.
Yeah.
That's today. I could take one of my old smartphones and do it, but I'd still have to keep updating the folders when I change things out. So it's just easier to have it on my phone because I can just connect via Bluetooth. I don't have to do anything. If they're all in there, it covers both. But if I was backed into a corner, it was a choice of digital subscription stuff or dig out an old iTunes or iPod or Zune or something and make that work, I would choose the latter. So I think there is still the opportunity for functionality. It's just there's not going to be working iPods out there in most conditions. I just saw a news story the other day about somebody who had kept theirs plugged in for like 9 straight years because they were petrified about what would happen if they unplugged it. They didn't think it would hold a charge anymore. But like they loved it, so they wanted to keep it. I think there's still a market for it today, but Dave disagrees, and it's been voted out.
Come to think of it, I have my iPod Touch still.
Yeah.
I just thought about it, and I think I know where it is. It dies as soon
the wrong
as
camera's
you
on me.
unplug it.
Now, let me say, iPod Shuffle, I never got behind.
Because it was stupid.
It was so, like, I get it small and I get whatever, but it's like,
It's
I'm
a
always-
shitty version of Spotify.
yeah, I'm always beholden to, like, random, come on.
Yeah, not a fan. That's part of it too. Is honestly, I'm very selective sometimes about my music if when I want to what I want to listen to. So having the search functionality that you didn't have on the original iPod helps.
Shut up, Dave. You've lost your speaking privileges. Did we do To Catch a Predator?
We did.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Did I give it
So-
a 10 now?
You gave it a 10 now, yes.
Good.
You said you would give it higher than a 10.
Speaking
Michelle
of things that may have not
also-
aged very well.
Michelle also gave it a 10.
I don't think I was on that episode.
You were not.
It is a 10. No, it aged great. I mean, the problem is that one guy killed himself, which is...
That would be why I don't know that it aged well.
Well, so you could blame the show.
Hello,
for-
potential pedophile. You are going to be on TV. All right, well, I'm going to go kill myself.
That is what happened, actually.
Yeah, I know.
That's what ended To Catch a Predator.
I'm
Now,
aware.
I don't think I knew that when we did this show.
He's got
No.
another version on YouTube. He still
yeah.
has a show.
It
Yes, he
still
does.
doesn't change my score even knowing that, but yeah, it's a whole thing.
I feel like South Park's episode about that made sure it didn't age well.
So we've
Yeah.
voted in about 1/3 of our time capsule subjects, which is, I guess, makes sense. I mean, 7 out of 10 gets you in, so that's about where the math
Why
breaks.
is the Game Boy on there? I have a Switch now. I should just play my Switch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Why
that
would I
is the
ever
one
need
Yeah,
that
the old
Dave,
Game
definitely
regular
Boy?
looks out of
Nintendo.
place now.
Isn't
I'll
the
tell you what Dave
PlayStation
gave for that is for a
5?
score.
No, Dave, PlayStation
What did I
5, and it has all the games you could have played before. It's just a better version.
It's not actually. It doesn't because you can't play all the games that you used to play before.
Yes, you can. You can find a
you
way
can.
to play all this stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, just as
Mhm.
much as you can listen to all the music. You
The
can play
Game
all
Boy
the-
is the elephant in the room here, although the NES is also there. But regardless, those two certainly stand out just because they're the most, I mean, they're really the only technology stuff that we had put in prior to this.
You guys did teddy bears?
Stuffed animals,
Stuffed
yep.
animals.
Okay.
All right. What did I give? What did I give the Game Boy?
A
'Cause
stuffed animal. Why did
I
I get a
believe
stuffed
it was
animal?
an
I just
8
get a
now.
dog. Dog's everything stuffed animal used to be, but better. It's just an advanced stuffed animal.
Yeah,
It even
Tickle-
dies one day.
Tickle
My
Me
stuffed
Elmo is
animals
just a
never
better
died.
stuffed animal. Tickle Me Elmo didn't make it in. It got voted out horrendously.
Yeah.
So, for the people who can't see
Oh,
the
you
screen, I'll go over the quick list because I compiled it all. Now, I should note there is one episode, number 241, that is just gone. It doesn't work properly in our TalkShoe archive, which is like the main one, and it's just disappeared from iTunes. Stitcher doesn't even exist anymore.
Don't worry. Dave will go watch it on his iPhone really easily. He'll
That's
find
right.
it.
Dave, why don't you pull it up?
So I don't know what was in it because I didn't put it in the episode description. I just said that we did time capsule. So I have no clue what those two things were, if they made it in or not. I have no idea.
Okay.
But the NES, the Game Boy, Bob Ross, Bill Nye, Legends of the Hidden Temple, Sonic 1 through 3, which we did as a group. I don't know why, but we did weird things back then. Hook and Mrs. Doubtfire, 2 Robin Williams movies. Stuffed Animals, NBA Jam, Doug, which Sean wasn't here for, Guts, Mulan, Batman the Animated Series, To Catch a Predator, and now I just put in Anchorman.
Hilariously, Doug would not be in the time capsule had I been on that episode, so that's probably a good thing.
Goes to show you.
Great.
Can't
Yeah.
miss.
Interesting.
Legends of the Hidden Temple is such a fucking good show.
Oh, it's so.
I went back and
it's-
watched
we had-
multiple episodes of it on Paramount recently.
We glowed, like we just had glowing reviews about it from what I remember. On
I
that one.
wanted to be on that show so fucking bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Me
really just
too.
like the early version of the challenge.
We could
Like,
very
that's-
easily
This is the genesis of the challenge.
procure
Fucking
content
kinda
for our YouTube channel if we just wanted to do like a rewatchable series of either Guts and or Legends of the Hidden Temple. It
It's
is
so good.
replete with chestnuts.
They're so good.
Yes.
I mean, I'm down.
But anyways,
fine.
those are the things that are in the time capsule. These are the now 16 creme de la creme that will endure for aliens and future us alike when we open this up in 50 years. We said this starting about 11 years ago, so I guess we have 39 years left.
So Dave is ostracized. He's a pariah, and we all know it. But I will, Cody, say we did J.K. Rowling in a related segment. It's not time capsule, but it's the same idea. And I was the only one fighting to keep J.K. Rowling like in the time capsule. And some years later, I have seen like, oh man, that was a bad call.
Well,
Yeah,
you
it's a
didn't know
terrible
what was
call.
going to
A
happen.
lot of the bad stuff, yeah. But she
Oh
had
no,
started.
it had already happened.
No, I hadn't.
Not to this level.
No.
There were
She
whispers
had
and a couple
started
things.
showing
But
some weird signs about like not letting her characters just like coming in later and being like, no, actually, like he
Well, I
was
mean,
this.
I wouldn't have voted her in either because she did a shit ton of stereotypes that I could notice like when I was reading the book. But I was like, yeah, I'm still gonna keep reading it. It's fine.
Yeah, well. So,
Hmm.
Oh, the Irish guy blows everything up. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Well, I was
Don't
trying to
worry
say, look what she is responsible for this cultural phenomenon. It's like, yeah, but like she's really problematic.
I mean,
So,
you're right.
I
she
made a
is
mistake.
influential.
So I
for
made a
that.
mistake. Dave will also one day learn from his mistake.
I mean, this was before there was a theme park associated to it, right? When you were, or was?
I mean, that's true. That's a good question.
Because you might have been kind of right with a theme park, three theme parks, and a musical that was bad, and then like a TV series, and three more movies that were horrendous. I don't know.
And well, now they're doing a TV series.
Yeah, like the finally.
Yeah.
But then they should have done all along.
Yeah, Harry Potter.
that's time
What
capsule.
were we talking about?
I don't know. It just goes to show you how different things are, though, because we used to tuck time capsule into like a 20-minute segment and still do
Oh,
two things.
I had the same thought of like, God, we could talk about the fucking first thing we talked about today. I forgot already
Anchorman.
the entire time.
Anchorman.
Man.
Anchorman, that's right.
Oh, I could have talked about the iPod so much more.
Yeah, that's true.
It was
too.
a key flirting device in high school. Of like, look at all the music I have. Come listen to it with me.
Especially once Dave started spouting his nonsense. I
Yeah.
was ready. To
Sean and I could have just gone
lose
in
it.
on Dave, and we held back.
Yeah, yeah, we did.
How dare I?
I should
have
be
an
nice to
opinion?
Dave because Dave's a bunch of sick kids.
Dave,
But-
you should
but
get
then-
you
but
should
then
get
he-
all three of your kids like an iPod generation like 7, and then see what they like about it and see
Yeah.
if they enjoy it.
We can see if they have better taste than you.
I just think one of the benefits is it won't have access to a whole bunch of the stuff that they could get themselves in trouble with.
Yeah,
It's only going to play music.
yeah. But
They
that's
can't go on and find like a YouTube video about how to make a bomb.
That's a fucking excellent point of how the iPod cannot get to the bad things
Yeah.
that are on the internet, and it would just have TV shows and music.
But Dave wants his kids to be abducted.
You're right.
So
And then end up on Chris Hansen, and the whole thing comes full circle. That is the end of the episode. Thank you for tuning in to Gray Areas. We will promise to look at Time Capsule before we do it again, and we'll discuss as a group. We'll see what we want to do with it as a future, because we already have all these things we've decided on, but it would be weird to change the standard, but maybe we need to. Because as we start to tackle more and more things from the 2000s, I think that bar is going to change compared to what it was with like dinky little 90s toys and the like that we were doing back then. We'll see.
Yeah.
We will talk about it. That's the end of the episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, grayareas.live, or youtube.com/@grayareaslive. It's @grayareaslive on social media as well. Thank you for watching. We will see you